We're live. Okay, so I found a different app. Well, it's not a different app because I wasn't using an app before to read scary stories. I found an app which is different than the website I've been using. I've been using Scary for Kids, but this is an app. I can't remember what it's called. I gotta turn my tablet on. 1 second. This app is called Scary Stories and Creepypastas. It's something new with a bunch of stories I've never heard before. So that's good. Some of these they have categories. Okay, let me show you. See, bunch of categories. It's too reflective. But there's artifacts, beings, dreams, locations. There's ones about murder and death. Rituals, which I'll probably never read. And strange and unknown. I got this today so I could just try it out, see if there's any good stories in here. So I wanted to read scary stories, but I couldn't find any on Scary for Kids that I haven't read before. So let's do this. Well, this one's called Unknown Number. It's a bunch of bad words. Never mind. I take that back. This one's called The Red Wristband. I might have heard this one before. So when you're admitted to a hospital, they place on your wrist a white wristband with your name on it. But there are different colored wristbands which symbolize other things. The red wristbands are placed on the dead patients. There was once a surgeon who worked on the night shift in a school hospital. He had just finished an operation and was on his way down to the basement. He entered the elevator and there was just one other person there. He casually chatted with the woman while the elevator descended. When the elevator door opened, another woman was about to enter the door, but the doctor slammed the close button and punched the highest floor in the building. Surprised, the woman reprimanded the doctor for being so rude and asked why he didn't let her in. The doctor said, "Well, you see, that woman I just operated on. She died while I was operating on her. Didn't you see the red wristband she was wearing?" And the woman smiled and raised her arms. Like this one? That's so creepy. I've actually read that one. I'm 100% sure I've seen that one. Okay. This one's called Tired Eyes. Skimming for bad words. Okay. We're good. I gotta back up. I can't sit on the edge of my bed because I almost fell off twice. So when I was 15, when it happened, my sister was 5, and it started on her 5th birthday when she received one of those dolls that were supposed to look like the owner. It was a standard doll, the same height as my sister, red hair, freckles. It even came with an outfit that matched her own. The only thing that was out of the ordinary were the eyes. My sister had very strange eyes, blue with flecks of brown near the pupil. So they used to tease her about how she had toilet bowls for eyes. And they'd never seen anyone with eyes like that. The dolls matched them perfectly. And they didn't recall who gave her the doll, but thought whoever it was had taken some time to repaint the eyes with the special touch. After she opened her gifts, their sister and her friends began running around, dressing up, the usual little kid stuff. Them not wanting to get stuck babysitting, snuck off to their room and shut the door. They were immersed in a scary story they were reading, and when they heard the door creak open, naturally, considering they were reading, they flipped out. They just flipped. And it turned around as fast as they could. Sitting nudged between mostly a shut door was the frame of what was the sister's doll. Had there not been a gang of little kids in the house, They might have gotten scared. But they were sure one of them, or all of them, had placed it there as a prank. They brought the doll downstairs, and that was the last time they heard of it for a few months. Safe from their sister's stories and packing it around with her constantly. What? That sentence didn't make sense, and I can't even make sense of it. 2 months later, things got strange. Their sister ran downstairs one day screaming that her doll was being mean to her, knowing it must have been her imagination, but no one wanted to upset her. So they put the doll in front of her and then put it on the top shelf of the sister's closet. She seemed satisfied that justice had been served. And they were a bit glad not to see it anymore. It was a bit creepy how much it looked like the sister. And they at times thought they'd seen her asleep with it. And wondered if they could even tell the difference in the dark. But that was besides the point, because with or without their parents' help, the doll would be trapped in the closet, and they certainly wouldn't take it down. Later that night, they heard their sister scream. They ran into the room to see the doll at the foot of her bed. It wasn't even leaning on something. It was just standing there, staring at her. So they grabbed the doll, bolted downstairs. Their parents came out to see what was going on and asked what was going on, but they didn't stop to explain. They stuffed the doll in the trash can, and the blue-brown eyes stared at them, almost in an angry way. I mean, you threw her in the trash can. When they went back to their sister, she was fast asleep, having been calmed down by the parents, and they were glad to be done with this ordeal, or so they thought. The next morning, they rubbed their eyes from the sleep, and they saw their sister at the door. And they blinked as they had blurry morning sight. When they opened their eyes again, she was gone. So they walked to her room, only to see that she was sound asleep. That was odd, they thought. It must have been a trick on their eyes, but later that night it happened again. They awoke by the sound of footsteps, which they thought were their sister standing outside their door. So you didn't call to her? Be like, dude, why are you standing outside my door? They turned on to switch the lights, only to see no one was there. Once again, she was fast asleep in her room when they checked. The garbage hadn't yet been picked up, so they decided they would check the bins tomorrow. Maybe their dad was playing a trick on them. The next morning, as they suspected, the trash was empty, so while they ate breakfast, they confronted the dad. Dad, did you take Jane's doll outside of my room last night or this morning? And the dad, in response, goes, what? Don't be stupid. That doll's out in the trash where you left it. No, I checked. It's not there. Well, maybe some kids saw it and wanted to take it for themselves. How should I know where the dang thing is? That was the end of that matter. Strange, but they shrugged it off. Oh, they ended up regretting it. That night, the sister was so scared, so they decided to stay in her room with her. Aw, that's sweet. That's like the sibling thing you do when your sister's scared or they just want to be with you. You go into their room or they come into your room. All night they heard terrible things, whispers and laughs, and they swore they were in his sister's voice. Footsteps above and around them. They were petrified. But soon enough, the noises stopped, and sleep overweighted fear. And they dreamt of the doll sneaking into the room with them. But in their dream, it occurred to them that ripping the doll's head off would stop it. So to this day, they don't know where they got that thought, but they wish they hadn't. They woke up to the doll lying on their sister's bed. They thought they knew what they needed to do. They grabbed the doll in the dark and held it down, and they remember it felt heavier than they remembered. And they grabbed hold of the hair, and it was so lifelike. Oh my gosh, if it ends up being the sister. They looked into the doll's eyes, and they tried to take the head off. And it looked as if there was fear in the eyes. Finally, there was a sickening rip, and the head popped off. And they smiled, only then to realize how tired they were. They laid down, kicking the head the body so they could sleep. They woke up to the sound of screaming. The mother was in hysterics. They ran to her room. Their face was covered in tears. They looked around, and there was blood everywhere. It was on the floor and on the hands, and the mother continued to shriek as she held the doll's head close to her chest. And why was she upset? He saved him. Where was all the blood coming from? They looked around, and lying in the sister's bed, they saw the doll. Did he kill his sister thinking it was the doll? That's what's sad and sick all at the same time. That is a neat twist, though. I don't think I've ever seen that kind of twist in a story before. Okay, so the next story is going to be called The Angel. A few years ago, a mother and a father decided to they needed a break. So they wanted to head out for a night on the town. They called their most trusted babysitter. When the babysitter arrived, the two children were already fast asleep in bed. So the babysitter just had to sit around and make sure everything was okay with the children. Later that night, the babysitter got bored and went to watch TV. But she couldn't watch it downstairs because they did not have cable downstairs. The parents didn't want the children watching too much garbage. So she called them and asked if she could watch cable in the parents' room. Of course, the parents said it was okay, but the babysitter had one final request. She asked to cover up the angel statue outside the bedroom with a blanket or cloth, and at that very moment, at the very least, close the blinds because it made her nervous. The phone line went silent for a minute, and the father, who was talking to the babysitter, said, "Take the children out of there now. We will call the police. We don't have a statue." The police found all three in the house dead within 3 minutes of the call. No angel statue was ever found. That's a different twist than like the clown statue, the statue. It's basically the same thing, minus no one ends up dead. They mostly end up being saved. The second I started reading that one, she's all like cover. I was all like, oh, it's like the clown statue. Yeah. I've read one like that before. This story was written in 2008. They give you little things up here that tell you what year everything was written. Can you see that, or is it too small? If it's too small, it just says it was written 4/7/2008, which is April 7th, 2008. That's cool. There's this one called The Girl in the Picture, but I think we've read this one. Yeah, it's the story where the boy picks up this picture, and it's of the most beautiful woman he's ever seen, and she's holding up 2 fingers. And so he takes the picture, goes around the school, and asks everyone if they've seen her, and they go, "No, we've never even seen that picture before in our lives." So this taunts the boy for a few days, and then one day, the boy gets out of bed because for the past few nights he's been seeing someone across the street. He's all like, "Oh, wow, I'm going to go check it out." When he gets out there, it's the woman from the picture. The woman from the picture is outside the door, and she's on the other side of the street. He goes to go see her. He gets hit by a car. He instantly dies. And then the man sees the picture that was in the boy's hand, and she's wearing something totally different because she changes her outfit to depict a beautiful outfit for each man or woman she picks up when they get the picture, and she's holding up 3 fingers, meaning that she's holding up as many fingers as many victims she's taken. This story is also from 2008. Okay, I'm trying to find another story that I haven't. This one's called Why He Weeps. This one says it should take 1.5 minutes to read. Great. I love how they tell you how long. The story was written in 2009. I am shooketh. I wonder if they're all written from long ago. Long ago being 2000s. Okay. So I heard stories of it. A retreat road down in Alberta. They have a monastery there, robes and everything. But their real claim to fame is the massive statue of Christ being crucified in the woods. They have been there a few times, walked up the path, and all the smaller statues beside the palace. There was a baby, a group of people reaching towards Jesus, and all of those. And the 20-foot tall cross of Jesus hanging from it. And what gets a lot of people, though, is that Jesus is weeping on the cross. Nobody can figure out why. Weeping is not an action of Lord and Savior. Okay? Never. Unthinkable. They've been there a few times during the day. It was an interesting walk, even for the atheists like themselves. That's what it says. It was still inspiring. And they happened to notice lights beneath the statue. And they asked around, and if they light up the path at night, and if they could come back then. But they were told the path would be closed, and no one could tell them why. Not one to follow the rules, they returned that night and made their way over the fence and onto the path. As they walked the winding route to the statue, they passed a smaller statue. They seemed different. It was the angle of the light hitting them. The statue of the baby, its eyes were all sunken in, and the shadows seemed to make the fingers look like claws.
Got a new survivor. It's 36 survivor now.
I had 36 before.
Oh. Whoa. Oh, I thought you had 35.
No, I've had 37.
Someone unsurvived you?
I don't know. I'll check it out later. But the fingers look like claws, and the statue of people reaching towards Jesus, they looked dead, reaching towards Jesus, with the shadow casting a look of horror in their faces. Something about that really unsettled them, but it was a deeper level than they just depicted. They reached the statue of Jesus and gazed upon his face, and they stood there and felt like hours just wondering why he was weeping. What for? What cause? And they heard the whistling of the trees all the sides along. Before they saw anything, they gazed up at Jesus and looked deep into those stone eyes and understood that night he was weeping for him. Okay. Does the guy die? I'm confused. Okay. It's fine. It's not that scary, I guess, to me. This one's called The Doll. So they gave her a doll on her birthday, which the sentence just starts off with. She loved it at first and told them it was beautiful. Its hair was so soft and the dress was so pretty she wouldn't let it out of her sight for days. During the day, she'd set it on the table so she could see it when she cleaned the house. During the night, she sat it next to the bed so looking at it looked like it was watching them while they slept with big blue unmoving eyes. And okay, so it's a husband giving the doll to the wife. What? Oh, I thought you wanted something.
No, don't want me.
But their wife loved the doll, for the doll soon changed as they noticed something was bothering her. They obviously... No, I haven't. This one's different.
Okay.
Have I?
That really doll lady you have.
No, not crazy doll lady. The husband gives the doll to his wife. She's not a crazy doll lady. It's the only one she has, I think. Have a pebble in my tights. And it's pokey. But she wouldn't tell them at first. She said it was just being silly. But day after day, she closed herself more and more away from them. and they couldn't take it anymore. So they pressed her for answers and told her she would tell them what was going on or he would drag her to the doctors. She broke down crying. She told him it was the doll and it was scaring her. She told him she had a feeling that she was constantly being watched. Sometimes it even seemed like it moved. This worried him, and they wanted to take a look at the doll. It sat motionless on the little table in the bedroom with big blue eyes, which were unchanging. And they couldn't help but sigh of relief a bit when she was not moving. She couldn't have been. So they turned away, but then saw a tiny movement from the corner of their eye. They turned back to the doll, picking it up from the table, and held their face close to the doll's and stared at his eyes. Something was moving. They tried to concentrate and look closer. Yeah, there was something definitely moving, but it wasn't the eye itself. It was something behind the eyes. Before they could register that, the eye burst and out spilled at least 10 wriggling maggots. Ugh. Maggots. They dropped the doll in shock, backing away. The wife yelled from the other room and asked what was going on, and they yelled back, trying not to worry her. They picked up the doll again, using a tissue to wipe away the maggots. Inside, they saw more pressed against the skin and the outer layer. Soon, they hoped. So soon already, they had hoped that she would have lasted a little longer. But they would give her a new one. Maybe keep it alive first. That will make it last longer for sure. While they throw the old doll away, they think about how their wife always says she loves thick blonde curls of little Katie down the block. When doesn't she have blue eyes? Are these dolls children? Okay, one. I have a stick. I thought it was a rock, but it's a stick. Is he putting children into that doll? Are they decomposing in that doll? That's the only thing I can think of, which sounds super dark and morbid. But I mean, what else? What else do I have to think of? That's creepy. This story is also from 2009. That is so creepy. I'm not even gonna lie. This one's called You. Ask me about that later. The next time you go to a library, make sure you keep your eye out for a certain book. There is no other book like it and has no copies. It can turn up anywhere in the libraries. It can be on a shelf, on any table, in the hands of any person. The cover is made of leather and the book is titled You. Once you find the book, don't open it. Go to the librarian to check the book out. The librarian should give a strange look and utter, "Oh, that one." Bring the book home. You may be tempted to open it, but make sure you don't. At midnight, step into your closet, book in hand, and shut the door. Make sure all you see is darkness and that the only noise you can hear is your heartbeat. Open the book, and in the book contains all the knowledge from your past, present, and future. As you flip the pages, moving from past events to present events. Should you stop and reach the end of present events, you will know when to stop when you see yourself in the closet reading the book. Before you move on to read future events, think about whether you really want to know your future. If you decide not to read further, close the book, leave it on the floor in the closet, and leave. Be sure to keep the book inside the closet. You will notice in the morning that the book is gone. If you decide to read your future events, begin to turn the pages of the book. It's extremely important that you do not scream when you read about your own death. Don't take your eyes off the books when you see yourself being dragged into the depths of darkness that was once your closet. Don't blink as you see yourself being torn apart by a hungry beast. Oh my gosh. And don't be surprised when you feel the beast's hand on your shoulder. Oh, that's creepy. That's creepy. That's creepy. No, that's weird. That's different. I've never actually seen that in a story. That's not what I thought the way it was. The way they have the story, that's not the way I thought it was going to go when they put him in the closet. It's not what I thought. This one's called The Flip Book. As a kid, they loved flip books. They were all they did in art class. Whenever they had it, they worked really hard on one particular flip book. It was around 50 pages long. So they guessed it was a simple stick figure walking into the page, waving at you and then walking off. And they would look at it a dozen times a day. And then it got boring. You know how kids are. Not entertained by one thing for very long. They tossed it under their bed and never gave it a second thought. A few moments later, they cleaned their room and swept a stack of papers out from under the bed. They quite didn't remember what it was. They flipped through it once again and got the sweet taste of nostalgia. It was the flip book. It was once more, and noticed that the pages hadn't aged or gained dirt at all. They flipped through it a third time, and the little stick man walked onto the page, waved, but didn't walk off. Instead, a second stick man joined him. It waltzed up, having either an item in its hand or a severely disfigured arm. It's not like anyone could tell the difference. A stick man walked next to the first stick man, stood there for a moment, and whacked the poor fellow upside the head. The figure fell, and the second stick man swung his stick at the other man again and again and again. And they assumed what was stick man blood from the stick figure's rather jagged body. It looked like nothing more than smeared pencil stains. The killer stick man proceeded to bend down and tear apart the first stick man's body, limb for thin limb. Once he was done, he bent each one of the characters into letters, and as he set them upon the page, formed a single word. He grabbed the base of his own round head and tore it off. And tore off his legs and then one of his arms. And his zigzag body parts formed themselves into a second word. And what they read made them burn the flip book. You're next. That, I've never seen anyone do a scary story on flip books. This must be an old story, though. It's from 2010. May 13th, 2010, and it's almost 11 years old. I've never heard a story like that. That's neat. I love that. I like reading unique stories I've never read before. I don't know how to pronounce this one. Marina Mordgard Gleskorf. There is a video on YouTube named Marina Mordgard Gleskorf. If you search this, you'll find nothing. The few times you find something, all you see is a 20-second video of a man staring intently at you, motionless, then grinning for the last 2 seconds. The background is undefined. This is the only part of the actual video. The full video lasts 2 minutes and was removed by YouTube after 153 people viewed the video, gorged their own eyes out, and mailed them to YouTube's main office in St. Bruno. That's gross. And said people had gotten rid of themselves in many ways. It was not yet known how they managed to mail their eyes after taking them out, and the cryptic inscription they carved on their forearms had not been deciphered. YouTube will periodically put up the first 20 seconds of the video to quench people's suspicions, so that people do not go looking for the real thing and upload it. The video itself was viewed by one YouTube staff member. He screamed after 45 seconds. The man was under constant sedatives and is apparently unable to recall what he saw. The other people who were in the same room while he viewed it and turned off the video for him say that all they could hear was a high-pitched drilling sound. None of them dared to look at the screen. The person who uploaded the video was never found, the IP address being non-existent, and the man of the video never being identified. I have heard this one before. This story's from 2008. My gosh. I have heard that story before. That's like a big thing that goes around. This one's called Express. By the time Kevin made his way down the subway station, there was no one else there but a solitary old man sitting on a bench using his cane to help him sit up straight. Kevin squinted at the schedule on the wall. From behind, he heard a grisly sound say, "Whichever one you're waiting for, you're at the right station. They all stop here." Kevin turned to see the old man watching him. "Even the A6?" he asked. "Oh, they all stop here," repeated the stranger, who appeared to be dressed far too warmly for the season. "I can't believe A6 stops here this late on Tuesday. Young man, this station is a major transfer point. I've been taking these trains for many years. Believe me when I tell you, all the trains stop here." As if the answer, the sound of an approaching train came from deep within the tunnel. It sounded like it was coming too fast to stop. It was only a moment before it rushed past. But that wasn't the shocking part. All the cars were jet black, but it didn't look like they were painted, just made that way. Every car was covered in the most indescribable, horrific graffiti. Wild splashes of red paint decorated the windows. It was paint, wasn't it? The lighting inside was very dim, and all the passengers were shadowy figures who stood, unmoving. None of them were seated. Kevin couldn't make out any of their features. So why did he feel like they were watching him? "What the hell was that?" Kevin demanded at the mysterious black train as it disappeared into the opposite tunnel. The old man hung his head, almost in shame. "I'm sorry. I wasn't completely honest with you. There's actually only one train that doesn't stop here. Only one. Where does it go? Pray you never find out." Kevin stood stunned in the stunned silence before the old man added, "By the way, if you're taking A6, you need to be on platform 3. Kevin could barely grasp the words "thanks" before walking quickly away. As he was leaving, he heard the man call, "Also." He turned around to see the man fixing him with a steely gaze that let Kevin know the stranger was about to give him the most important warning that he would ever hear in his life. "The next time you see that train, it will stop. And don't get on it." That's, oh my gosh. That's not weird or anything. That was my sock, by the way. Had dirt in it. I had to fix that. That's neat. He wasn't lying. He did lie about all the other trains stopping. But what if the old man's seen that train before? And he needed someone else to be there because it would stop for the old man. No? That's not too bad of a theory. The Vault of Humanity. The story was written in 2014. This referenced the past. In the year 2005, the Humanity Archival Storage Project was commenced by leading government officials, scientists, and academic alumni across the world due to the fear that humanity's treasures were increasingly threatened by war and natural disasters. The project was one of the most complex undertakings in our species' history. The creation of an archive of humanity's knowledge and culture, the archival simplexal computer, was designed in the early days of the project. The device was composed of iron, the most stable element, and built to stand as a testament to our society's millennia. After the construction of the ASC, they assigned to HASP. They were a diverse bunch. consisting of representatives from the fields of science, history, and the arts, and every other possible area of human study. Their task was to program the device with information and artifacts worth preserving. Their group also started off quarterly enough, but they quickly broke down into sects and factions, like sections, as they started fought viciously. They started to fight viciously over what would be saved. The artists wanted music samples and paintings. The historians wanted their nation's prized documents, including the scientists. They wanted theories to be preserved. Eventually, though a series of backroom deals and shifting alliances between disparate groups, a compromise of sorts was reached. And into the device went the formulas of Newton and Einstein, the plays of Shakespeare, the music of Mozart, the paintings of Picasso, and many other great discoveries and creations of humanity. In 2012, it was finally time to store the device. Locations around the world were scouted out, ranging from the Himalayas to the bottom of the Atlantic. Eventually, a decision was made to place ASC beneath the Sweeney Mountains in Antarctica. The location was free from war and fault lines. The frigid code was even slow down wear and tear on the machine, extending its lifespan another millennia or so. It was perfect. Construction of the ASC vault started in 2013. The process took another year, and eventually the construction team reached a suitable depth, and they were there for the opening ceremony. As a drill team dug through the last 20 feet or so to reach the appropriate level for the ASC vault, and around noon they heard the drill stop. They thought they had finally reached an acceptable level, but the loud scream that quickly filled the air freed them from this thought. A rescue team was sent in, but they reported that the drillers hit a cavern hundreds of feet deep. A rescue operation was quickly launched, but all that was left of the team was corpses and smashed machinery. They simply fallen too far of a height for there to be any survivors. During cleanup, the body recovery team discovered something rather unusual. An ASC-like device wedged into the corner of the cavern. The device was nearly 5,000 years old. So someone previously had the idea, and then another team fell down there. That's quite interesting. We're gonna read Grand's box. It was always a treat for the three loving children when they got to visit their gran. Their grand's house was big, with plenty of rooms for hide and seek, and a pond in the garden, filled with fish and frogs, for the Levines who were crammed together in a 4-bedroom apartment. Grand's house was a fairy tale castle. It was also virtually treasure trove for toys. Bags of shining marbles, dominoes stacked neatly in their boxes, striped hula hoops and skipping ropes, boxes of colored chalk that children could use to color on the flagstones around the pond, teddy bears in all shapes and sizes, and a plethora of dolls with curly hair and frilly dresses. Then there was the box. Some days it was in the front room, proudly displayed on the mantel above the fireplace. Other days it was in the dining room, hiding among framed photographs. And other days it was upstairs in Grand's room. Sometimes it wasn't on display at all, and just sitting on the floor, halfway up the hallway. The youngest child, Vivian, once asked, "Why do you always move your box, Gran?" Something dark fiddled across Grant's face, like a storm blocking out the sun. "I don't. That box has a mind of its own." "You mean it moves by itself?" That wasn't incomprehensible to a 6-year-old. The box does what it feels, and I don't interfere. Vivian's sisters were more interested in the dolls. They'd spend hours brushing their hair and rearranging their clothes. But nothing piqued Vivian's curiosity quite like the box. She was never allowed to touch it, no matter where it moved itself. Every time they were around, Vivian would look at the box and wonder, what's the secret? Why wasn't she allowed to touch it? Years would pass, and Grand's house became they came to Grand's house less and less frequent. The girls were growing up. They had their own lives to live. When Vivian was 22, she moved to the heart of London, and the last and that was the last she saw of her Grand for a while. She stopped thinking about the box until her Grand died. At the wake held in her Grand's house, meh, it was the only one big enough to fit everyone in. Gran had made a lot of friends in her lifetime. Vivian felt a sharp pain in her chest when she stepped over the threshold. It had been years since she'd been in the house, yet everything looked the same. Older, perhaps, more faded, but still ignited the potent memories of childhood. Everyone wanted to offer gratitude and condolences, but all Vivian wanted to do was have some time alone. It would probably be the last time she was in the house she loved as a child, and she wanted to indulge in a memory lane trip. While the guests were congregating at the buffet table, Vivian quietly slipped upstairs. Everything was as she remembered it. The carpet patterned in various purples, the off-white wallpapers, and the paintings of Gran's old dogs that lined each and every wall. Somehow she found herself in Gran's bedroom. The shelves on the wall were still lined with glassy-eyed dolls, but their curls were limped now, covered in gray film of dust. And on the dressing table, surrounded by pots of powder and lipstick tubes, was the box. Vivian froze when she saw this. I lost my place. All her childhood curiosities came back. Grand's mysterious box that no one was ever allowed to touch. Looking at it now, Vivian didn't know why it had fascinated her so. It was just a plain box, 13 by 6 inches. The brass catch fastened a padlock. It was nothing pretty, nothing special, but Vivian could swear it was calling to her. It wasn't a voice, as such as more like a tugging sensation, as if invisible hands were pulling her towards it. She took a tentative step forward and picked up the box. Suddenly she felt 6 years old again, breaking Grand's most precious rule. She half expected Gran to come into her room and start scolding her, but Gran wasn't around anymore. Vivian made up her mind. There and then, she was taking the box. She slipped it into her handbag and didn't think about it again until she got home. It was about 10 o'clock by the time Vivian arrived back in London. Her flat was located around the butcher's on the corner. She hated walking past the butcher's during the day when all the slabs of meat were on display, sitting in pools of blood. At least at night, the windows were dark and the meat was stored. Up in the flat, Vivian took the box from her handbag and placed it on the freestanding bookshelf by the side of her bed. She didn't plan to keep it there permanently, but she was too tired to find a proper home for it. Kicking off her shoes, she flopped into bed and she crept over in a few minutes. Vivian dreamed she was standing in a field, waist deep in grass. There was nothing around her but green, an endless countryside. The sun was setting. It looked like spilled blood on the horizon. That's neat. That doesn't scare you? Dread. She could feel dread coming up her spine. There was something wrong with the place. There you go. Now you're scared. She couldn't see it, but she could feel it. Something bone-deep sense of self-preservation that kicked in when danger was close. She started to run. Somehow she had to get out of this field. She hadn't run more than a few meters when a hand broke through the ground, scrabbling blindly at her ankles. It was gray-skinned. The yellow fingernails gnarled and broken. Vivian screamed and kicked, but the hand put another punch through the earth. It caught her foot and she pitched forward into the ground. More decaying hands broke through the ground, fumbling over her body, pinning her down, and she fought and kicked the hands, but they were too strong. A, a pair closed around her neck, and Vivian tried to scream, but she couldn't even breathe. She snapped awake, clutching her throat, gasping for air. Her lungs ached as if she had been trying to choke herself out of real life. Grant's box was sitting on the nightstand next to the bed. Vivian frowned. She was sure she hadn't left. She had
Do
left
you
it on
have
the
a piece
bookshelf.
of thumb anymore?
I do. It's in my drawer, I think.
Pitbull?
Oh yeah, it should be in there. It's yellow. It's juicy fruit. It's square. It should be somewhere. I'll finish this story though, okay?
Okay. Where's the next?
My movies. No, that's my sister. She's being ready for bed. Oh my word! I lost my place. She was sure she left it on the bookshelf. Granny told her that the box had a mind of its own.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been a big fan of Creepypastas for quite a long time. They're actually really fun to read. I don't know where I put it, but you are going to need to close the door. Steffi's being loud because she's getting ready for bed. But she felt childish. She didn't actually believe the box had a mind of its own. So, still, Vivian felt the twinge of uneasiness when she fell asleep. The shadows shifting through her flat seemed more menacing now, as if the gray-skinned hands might burst through the floor at any second. Her nightstand was empty now, except for a lamp. She moved the box into the kitchen. It didn't look quite right in there either. The nightmares were worse that time. Instead of grasping hands, skeletons climbed out of the lonely fields. Lonely fields.
It's a little bit hard. A little bit.
Oh, they're talking about gum. But all Vivian could hear was creaking bones. That was a dream. She had to wake up. Vivian lurked awake, gasping. The blood stench still clung to her nostrils. She's so strong she could taste it. Oh, that's not a good way to describe something. That's gross. That's gross. Everything, she could smell everything spilling out of her body. She hoped that the box was out of the house, that she would be the last nightmare she'd ever have. But the third night, they were worse than anything. It was raining in this lonely field. Blood raindrops fell from black clouds, creaking sounds of skeletons trying to talk scraped against Vivian's ears. In the distance, she could see a house, and she started running towards it. As she drew near, she recognized the front door with the lion head knocker and the flowers overflowing in the front window boxes. It was Gran's house. And the voice lashed through the air, deeper and angrier, and all she could hear was, "Take me back." Vivian gasped and clutched her chest, and it felt something had hit her with a baseball bat. She fell to her knees as her lungs constricted. There was a dead weight on her chest, like something slowly suffocating her. When she opened her eyes, Grant's box was sitting on her chest. Vivian screamed and threw the box across the room. The lid rattled and it hit the floor, and the terrible voice came out, "Take me back." Grant's house had been in the nightmare. That was where the box wanted to be. Vivian grabbed her car keys. She didn't want to touch the box, so she wrapped it in an old towel. As soon as she got into the car, the smell of blood filled the air. Ugh. Vivian opened the windows, but all that didn't make a difference. Grant's house was 3 hours away from London, but Vivian was was there in less than 2, violating every speeding law known to mankind. Grant's house was stood dark and empty. The windows looked sad. When Vivian lifted the box from the back seat, it seemed to tremble in her hands, like it knew it was coming home. Vivian didn't have a key to the house, and the box couldn't fit through the letterbox. But she couldn't explain that to it. So she did the only thing she could think of. She threw the box through the window. Amid the noise of shattering glass, she heard a deeply satisfied sigh come from the box as it thudded on the carpet. Vivian got in her car and drove away. She didn't look back. It was years before she would be in the area again. Despite everything, she couldn't resist walking past Grant's house again. The flower boxes and lion head knocker were gone. The door had been painted red. Vivian's steps slowed as she tried to peer into the window. On the coffee table in the living room was the box. It didn't have a face. No, on was the box, and it didn't have a face. But Vivian sensed it was deeply content. It was back where it belonged. Vivian never visited her grandmother's house again. That's creepy. Okay. This one's called Bottle. This one should be fun. Their Dalmatian, not Dalmatian, damnation, came in the shape of a bottle. And not like the one you're thinking of, is what it says. When they were a child, their best friend lived next door in a little junkyard. A great place for kids to hang out. A junkyard full of mystery and exciting discoveries. And if you could find anything nice, nobody would mind if you took it. Except your parents, obviously. Well, not their friend's mom. Most of their bowls and plates came from the junkyard. But anyway, one day, a bunch of them were laughing and hanging out, dismantling cars. Some of them might have been interested in taking the parts of the car. They just finished breaking some stuff, and it was great. When they'd go to the engine, everywhere they would set to work on the interior. Under one of the seats was a little glass bottle full of some green bubbly liquid. Curiosity trumped hygiene in those days, so they uncorked it and sniffed it. It smelled pleasant, minty, floral. One of the kids, Jackie, dared them to drink it, and it was a double dog dare, so they had to. No, you don't. You can take the chance on losing a couple friends. Don't drink mysterious liquid. The taste was also pleasant. Oh, don't drink random liquid. Their body filled with a strange, pleasant sensation. Nothing else happened, not until that night. The first effect, they couldn't sleep. They hadn't needed sleep since. It was alright. They got a lot done. Second effect, a month later, they started to cough things up. They were playing alone in the woods and they coughed up blood. You need to get checked out then. Then there were more blood. And then there was puking. And then it brought them to tears. Struggling to breathe, literally puking out their guts, their mother seemed unhinged. But the bloodstains never had come out. If they hadn't abandoned their clothes they were wearing, the police searched frantically for a missing person. Oh, those poor police. They're not going to find a missing person. They're his clothes. New organs built up inside of them. They could feel them. They could see them. And when they closed their eyes, nameless lumps and spirals sprung out of nothing. The third effect, which happened 2 months later, not 3. Third effect, 2 months later, they began to carve the water. They couldn't possibly describe the feeling of thirsty skin, but it was a desperate thirst. And they left their parents' house one night and walked until they came to a swamp. They basically moved in. The swamp, bug-filled waters, felt like home, as they did all those years ago. They sat under the water watching the fish and salamanders get eaten by herons, looking at the surface, waiting for their prey. I'm sure you know the fourth effect was, and I'm typing this on a cell phone of my last victim. She was delicious. She smelled like fresh melons. Oh! Gross! Gross! I'm confused. What? No. Wait. What? I don't understand. I thought they were going to turn into a frog or something. Swamp. Maybe they did. Maybe they eat frogs. They could eat frogs. This one has left me utterly confused, kind of. Okay. Let's find the next one. This one's called We Lie. This one should be interesting. Adam entered the living room and sat down with a glass of wine, careful not to spill. He needed to have another talk with his wife. Things could get difficult. The wine helped him keep his head level. Clara? Yes? I'm glad you're here. We have to talk. Okay. About what? Can you help me understand why you did it? Why you hurt me like that? Clara was silent for a long time. Adam took a sip from the glass and remained patient. I was hurting too, and confused. Oh, it's hard to forgive you, Clara. I'm confused now. I know, but I don't want to talk about it now. Adam stood up and paced around the room for a few minutes and sat back down. Well, are you happy? Can you at least tell me that much? Yeah. So, as long as you're with me, I won't leave you, Adam. You know that. Did she, cheat or something? Really? Adam swirled the dark liquid, observing how the glass reflected the room's light. I've been having bad dreams lately, so knowing that someone's there watching me really helps. I have to leave now. Already, he said, so surprised. Hey, I know you should have come with me. I can do that. Sure, you already know how. How? Sensing that he wouldn't get an answer. Same as me. The room seemed to dim at the corners, as if it was being huddled by shadows with conspiring to eavesdrop. What? How could you say that, Clara? Another pause. Clara's not here. Adam felt something at the pit of his stomach. What do you mean you're not here? No, I never was. But I did speak to her once. Oh, yeah. And what did you say? Jump. He shot up from the chair, rubbing his temples. No, how is this possible? All those things she said. I was talking to Clara. I was talking to her. And at this point, Adam was not so much of talking with another as he was pleading with himself, but he forced himself to sit back. We lie. One more thing. He didn't respond. So they resumed without prompt. Those aren't dreams. Adam could recall one fragment of his nightmare, a dark alley, a dripping tunnel, the thrill of darting from shadow to shadow, a scream cut short, hands wrapping tight around something soft and yielding, and the reflection of the moon in the cold water, its black water rushing on his waist. He found his voice again. What do you mean? I borrow you. At this moment, Adam withdrew his trembling hands and stared at them in disbelief. He choked at the words, why? And the person moving freely now, without the need of human touch, and the answer with one single word of its own. Fun. Is he dead? Is he dead? Wait, you're not explaining this to me. They're not explaining this to me. Okay, so I'm going to leave this here. Oh, wow. There's so many more stories I can read. But I'll see you guys tomorrow when I do another live stream. I'll probably do another one on scary stories because these are fun. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!